I thought I'd planned a dream wedding, a custom-made gown costing 6 figures, 500 guests, and even a live band to play our first dance song, but the bride. She vanished. Later, I scrolled through her Instagram post, wearing that very gown, half naked, kneeling with her bridesmaids before some artist. I called her, and she screamed, "It's just jealous that my lover's art is superior to your money. Just wait until I sue her," and her whole gang ends up in prison, all because of mutual consumption. I am not kidding. This is the wildest story of betrayal and revenge you'll ever hear. On the wedding day, my wife ran off with the one that got away. On our wedding day, my fiancé, the bride, never showed up, nor did her bridesmaids. I waited alone in the grand ballroom all day, enduring the sympathetic yet scornful glances of the assembled guests. After dialing her 999 times, only to be rejected each time, I finally accepted the reality of her elopement. Returning to the empty marital home, I saw my wife's the one that got away had posted an update. "The art one want to explore with you isn't just spiritual, but physical." In the photo, my wife wore the $1 million gown I had custom made for her, kneeling naked at the man's feet with 6 bridesmaids. Their eyes were glazed and fervent, brimming with desire, as if the man before them were their deity, and they, his most devout worshippers. I stared at the photo, silent for a long moment, then liked the post and commented, "May your noble art forever rot in hell, along with the 2 of you." Then I screenshotted it, and sent it to each of the 6 bridesmaids' boyfriends. Such an artistic spectacle, it was only right their partners got to witness it too. Right after I sent the screenshots to the 6 bridesmaids' boyfriends, my phone rang. Caller ID, Serafina Davis, the bride, who had been missing all day and rejected my 999 calls, finally decided to show herself. "Ethan Hayes, are you out of your damn mind? You actually screenshotted it. And you sent it to other people. You despicable sneak, snitching behind my back." Her voice was distorted with rage, edged with a sob, yet utterly devoid of apology. "Do you know? Because of what you sent, Chloe Henderson's boyfriend and the others are all questioning them. They are going crazy. And Julian Vance. His work, which he prepared so meticulously, might be ruined now. He feels terrible about this. It's all your fault." Terrible. I almost laughed in disbelief. You wore the bride's wedding gown, brought your bridesmaids, and knelt naked at a man's feet to take those photos. What does he have to feel terrible about? Feeling terrible he didn't invite me, your legitimate fiancé, to observe his artistic creation. Or feeling terrible he couldn't take care of all 7 of you on our wedding day. The phone line went silent for a second, then erupted into an even sharper roar. "Ethan Hayes, you need to go. Now. Go apologize to Julian Vance. I've been too lenient with you. Do you hear me? Go apologize. Or we're finished." Serafina Davis ordered with an air of righteous indignation, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. A wave of absurdity instantly drowned out the last vestige of hope. Apologize. Why should I apologize? Instead, I'd like to ask, Serafina Davis, can you explain the details in the photo? Kneeling naked. Is this what you call the final project that required your absence on our wedding day? What legitimate school's final project requires a bride, wearing her wedding gown, with her bridesmaids, to parade themselves naked before another man like that? Showing such insatiable expressions, the phone line went silent for a moment, then came an even sharper accusation. "Ethan Hayes. Your mind is so filthy. That's art. You Philistine will never understand. I am just curious, with you all dressed like that, kneeling before him, did your artist Julian Vance not have any physiological reaction at all? Could it be he's impotent? Or did you already take care of him while you were kneeling? Ethan Hayes, you bastard. You're so petty. You're a pervert." She cursed furiously. "Filthy. Disgusting. You don't deserve me." She slammed the phone down. I stared at the darkened screen, no longer having any desire to call her back. I only sent her a text. "What? Are you regretting he had no reaction to you? Or have you already tasted him?" Serafina Davis typed for a long time but didn't reply. But her 6 close friends, the art participants in the photo, began to bombard me in turns. "Ethan Hayes, are you an idiot? What I wear or what photos I take are none of your business. How dare you send them to my boyfriend? If Julian Vance hadn't talked me out of it, I'd be there to kill you right now." Serafina Davis must be blind to have fallen for you. You can't even hold a candle to Julian. They are a match made in heaven. Who are you to deserve Serafina Davis? You couldn't keep your fiancé, so you resort to despicable tactics to ruin someone else's art. Disgusting. Go back to your doghouse. What photos we take is none of your damn business. Even if we posed naked with Julian Vance, that's our freedom. We're willing. What the hell do you know about art? You garbage. You're only good for watching us climax. Go apologize to Julian Vance, now. Otherwise, we're not done with you. You'll never see Serafina Davis again. If you don't kneel and apologize to Julian Vance, there's absolutely no way we'll let Serafina Davis marry you. He useless. He not even fit to carry Julian Vance's shoes. If he really that idle, just go die, you're an eyesore. Serafina Davis being with you is simply a waste of herself. Their arguments were surprisingly consistent. Serafina Davis was not wrong. Julian Vance was not wrong, and they were even less wrong. The only one wrong was me. I watched the hateful messages with a blank expression, screenshotted all the chat records, and carefully pieced them into a long image. Then, I opened my social media post to edit the text. Thank you to all friends and family who made time to attend the wedding of myself, Ethan Hayes, and Miss Serafina Davis today. However, the wedding has been cancelled. The reason is as shown below. At the same time, I would like to thank Miss Serafina Davis' 6 closest friends, who unanimously agreed that I am unworthy of Miss Davis, and cannot even hold a candle to Mr. Julian Vance. In order not to hinder Miss Serafina Davis and Mr. Julian Vance's grand artistic future, I, Ethan Hayes, voluntarily withdraw, effective immediately. I am dissolving my engagement with Miss Serafina Davis. From now on, we go our separate ways, unrelated. We wish each other well, no blessings needed. I attached the screenshot of Julian Vance's social media post, that art photo. The moment I sent it, my phone began to vibrate wildly, and notification sounds rang out densely. Opening the comments section, it was, as expected, a complete mess. Holy crap. The bride ran off with another man to take photos like this on her wedding day. Mr. Hayes has got some serious cuckoldry going on. Run. This is ing art. My Serafina Davis' eyes are practically melting with desire, and her friends are no good either. TSK, these girls, their bodies are truly the most slutty of sluts. So open-minded, can I get their contact info? Bro. I wanna, smirk, JPG. Kneeling naked. $1 million gown. 8 people. TSK, playing so wild. I don't understand the rich people's world. But I am deeply shocked. Currently, Apple is only up to 17p. If they don't hurry, at Serafina Davis and her group's rate of expansion, they'll soon exceed it. Heartache for Mr. Hayes for a second. Good riddance to a woman like that. Come to my place tonight, buddy. I'll celebrate your return to single life. Chloe Henderson, you better explain yourself. Didn't you say you were going with Serafina Davis to the studio to see an art exhibition? Did you become the exhibition yourself? Sophia Harrison, you better give me a reasonable explanation. You were crying and begging me for forgiveness just now, saying it was just helping a friend. Do you think I am blind? Holy shit. So that pathetic act just now was all fake. This bitch. The 6 bridesmaids' boyfriends also appeared one by one. It seemed they had just been fooled by their girlfriends. Now, seeing the screenshot on my social media post, they realized they had been played for fools. Immediately after, the 2 latest comments pushed the atmosphere to its peak. One was from Mr. Henderson, Chloe's fiancé, a real estate company CEO. Chloe Henderson, it's over. Don't contact me anymore. The thought of you kissing me with that mouth that might have licked Julian Vance makes me want to vomit. You rotten-hearted slut. You deserve that pathetic pervert Julian. You two deserve each other. Rot in hell together. The other was from Mr. Harrison, Sophia's husband, a publicly traded company CEO. Sophia Harrison, my lawyer will send you the divorce papers. You'll leave with nothing. Furthermore, I've already applied for investigation and evidence collection. The improper financial dealings and intimate contact between you and Julian Vance are well documented. You cheap tramp. You two deserve each other. Rot in hell together, along with that quickie artist Julian Vance. The comments section completely exploded. Breaking news. The gloves are off. You rotten-hearted slut. You deserve that pathetic pervert Julian. That analogy is spot on. It seems these girls have an unclear relationship with Julian Vance. No wonder they were so invested in the photos. Their expressions were almost climaxing. Well done. These bitches deserve to be ruined. In the midst of the chaos, Serafina Davis never appeared, nor did she respond, as if this storm had nothing to do with her. Just then, a call came in. I frowned and answered. It was Serafina Davis' mother, her voice tearful, urgent, and panicked. Ethan, you have to delete that social media post. Serafina Davis must have a reason. She must have been forced. She loves you so much, how could she do anything to betray you? There must be a misunderstanding. Auntie, for all these years, my care for Serafina Davis has been clear for all to see. If it hadn't crossed a fundamental line this time, I wouldn't have done this. Ethan, don't be impulsive. Listen to me. Your uncle and I have invited Mr. Hayes and Mrs. Hayes to our home. We thought the two families could sit down and talk things through, and clear up the misunderstanding first. What? Mr. Hayes and Mrs. Hayes were at their house. I knew better than anyone the current state of the Davis family. They had pinned all their hopes on the alliance between Serafina Davis and me. Now that the wedding was off, would they? I hung up the phone, grabbed my car keys, and rushed out. I sped all the way to the Davis estate, pushing open the door. Only Mrs. Hayes was in the living room, her face looking somewhat unnatural. Dad, Mom, are you two okay? We're fine. Mrs. Hayes patted my hand. Serafina Davis' parents said they went out to buy something, and would be right back. They told us to sit for a bit. Just then, a pungent smell of burning suddenly filled the air. The curtains in the corner of the living room burst into flames. The fire spread extremely fast and thick. Smoke instantly filled the entire space. I immediately pressed the smoke alarm button on the wall. No reaction. Then I looked at the automatic sprinkler system on the ceiling. Motionless. All systems were down. Quick, let's go. I pulled my parents, trying to rush towards the door. The thick smoke made it impossible to see, and breathing became difficult. Just as we were about to be swallowed by the smoke, with a loud bang, the villa's front door was violently kicked open. Serafina Davis rushed in, heading straight for us, shielding Mrs. Hayes with her body, and shouting hoarsely, "Uncle, Auntie, Ethan Hayes. Follow me." She was extremely familiar with the villa's layout, and even in the dense smoke, she accurately found her way, pulling us stumbling out of the burning house. Outside, the sirens of fire trucks were already wailing. As soon as we escaped danger, Serafina Davis collapsed to the ground, having inhaled too much smoke and suffered burns to her arm from falling debris. The arriving firefighters quickly brought the blaze under control and gave a thumbs up to the weakened Serafina Davis. Good job, young lady. So brave. Young man, is so lucky to have such a girlfriend, who would risk her life for you. I looked at Serafina Davis, lying on the ground, and then at my parents, who were coughing incessantly from smoke inhalation. My eyes filled with complex emotions. I took Serafina Davis and my parents to the hospital. I watched the doctor treat the burns on Serafina Davis' arm. She winced in pain, her face contorted. Strangely, there wasn't much stir in my heart, let alone any heartache. Perhaps the waiting on the wedding day, perhaps that glaring photo, had already drained all my emotions. Serafina Davis looked at me, with tear-filled eyes, her accusations choked in her throat. Ethan Hayes, you weren't like this before. You used to dote on me so much, even a tiny scratch would make you worried for ages. Now I've suffered such a severe injury saving you all, and you won't even look at me. She sobbed, her shoulders trembling slightly, trying to awaken the person I remembered. I met her gaze calmly. I doted on the Serafina Davis, who had me in her heart, not the Serafina Davis, who abandoned me on my wedding day to take naked art photos with another man, and certainly not the Serafina Davis, who made me wait an entire day in the grand ballroom, rejected my 999 calls, and then had the audacity to accuse me. My voice was flat, as if stating a fact unrelated to myself. Ethan Hayes, how can you be so petty? Serafina Davis stopped pretending, sharply raising her voice. I saved your family without a second thought. It was me. You're not even grateful, and is still clinging to these minor issues. Do you know how much I sacrificed for you? Julian Vance is such an outstanding person. I could have been with him. Her mother immediately chimed in from the side, exactly, Ethan. Serafina Davis got hurt saving you. How can you talk like that? It's so hurtful. Serafina Davis has had so many suitors since she was little, but she only ever saw you. How can you treat her like this? Serafina Davis' father frowned deeply, softly telling them to say less. I ignored her mother's emotional manipulation, my gaze still fixed on Serafina Davis' face. First, the fire wasn't large, and while the smoke was choking, we could have found our way out ourselves. You rushing in was, at most, a nice gesture, but hardly life-saving. Second, minor issues. What exactly constitutes a major issue in your eyes? Julian Vance asking you to celebrate his birthday, and you cancelling our pre-planned graduation trip, is that a minor issue? Julian Vance feeling down, and you running off in the middle of the night to comfort him when I was hospitalized with acute appendicitis, leaving me alone in my hospital room, is that a minor issue? Julian Vance needing inspiration, and you wearing my custom-made wedding gown with your bridesmaids, kneeling naked before him for photos, is that a minor issue? Julian Vance asking you to disappear on our wedding day, making me wait an entire day in the grand ballroom, to be mocked by all the guests, is that a minor issue? With each question I asked, Serafina Davis' face grew paler. Serafina Davis, truthfully, all these years, for Julian Vance, you've abandoned me and hurt me time and again. Are these truly minor issues? Regarding this art photo, let's put ourselves in each other's shoes. If it were me today, with my childhood sweetheart and her friends, taking photos like that on my wedding day, what would you think? Serafina Davis' eyes flickered, her lips trembled, but she couldn't find a rebuttal, only forcing out an argument. That's different. Our interaction with Julian Vance was purely artistic. It's your filthy mind, your corrupt heart, that sees everything as dirty. Our wedding was just postponed, not cancelled. What's the big deal? But if Julian Vance's final project isn't submitted, his advisor will scold him. Do you know how important that is to him? You don't understand art at all. You don't understand Julian Vance's talent. All you can do is make money, in nothing but your money. The more she spoke, the more agitated she became, as if she were the one who had suffered an enormous injustice. I am not wrong. None of us are wrong. Either one who's wrong. It's just too petty. Looking at her stubborn delusion, I suddenly found it somewhat amusing. I nodded, agreeing with her words. You're right, postponing the wedding, indeed, isn't a problem. Serafina Davis seemed surprised that I had given in so easily. The anger on her face instantly froze, replaced by a flicker of bewilderment and relief in her eyes. She had just sighed in relief, thinking the storm had passed. I looked at her, uttering my next words clearly and calmly. One by one. So, our engagement is hereby dissolved. After all, we haven't legally registered our marriage yet. The emotion in Serafina Davis' eyes was finally no longer indignation, but genuine panic. She abruptly grabbed my arm. Dissolve the engagement. Ethan Hayes, are you out of your mind? Just because of a few photos. Just because of a minor misunderstanding. All these years of our relationship. You're just cutting it off. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You're too sensitive. I told you it was art. Nothing happened between us. You can't ruin everything we have over something so trivial. She was still trying to convince me, or perhaps herself. In her eyes, betrayal and deception truly seemed to be minor issues. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her any longer. This fundamental difference in perception was irreparable. I pulled my arm free and looked at Mr. Davis, who was ashen-faced beside me. Uncle, since Serafina Davis thinks it's no big deal, I'd like to hear your and Auntie's thoughts. Serafina Davis tried to say something, but Mr. Davis suddenly raised his hand and delivered a resounding slap across her face. Smack. Serafina Davis was stunned, covering her face, staring incredulously at her father. Mrs. Davis gasped and tried to step forward, but Mr. Davis stopped her with a glance. You disgraceful child. Mr. Davis pointed at Serafina Davis, trembling with rage. You do something so shameless, and then you have the audacity to say someone else is making a mountain out of a molehill. He turned to me, forcing a conciliatory expression onto his face. Ethan, please don't be angry. It's my fault for failing as a father. Don't worry, I'll discipline her properly. I'll make sure she knows what she should and shouldn't do. Look, your relationship has been so many years. It's not easy. How can you just cut it off? Give her another chance, okay? His tone was sincere, but I could clearly see the fear of losing resources deep in his eyes. The Davis family was already an empty shell, maintaining its outward prestige only through my family's financial infusions. A cold sneer formed in my heart. This was a perfect opportunity to leverage the situation. Uncle, for me to reconsider, it's not impossible. I paused, my gaze sweeping over Serafina Davis, who guiltily lowered her head. This fire today, it was far too suspicious. The smoke alarm was dead, and the automatic sprinkler system didn't react. I suspect it was arson. If the Davis family is truly sincere, then go to the police, file a report, and open an investigation, find out who wanted to harm my family. As soon as I finished speaking, Serafina Davis abruptly looked up, her eyes filled with panic. No. We can't call the police. She spoke urgently, her voice warped. Uncle and Auntie are fine, aren't they? Why make a big deal out of it? It's too much trouble to investigate. Besides, maybe the system was just old, there's no way it was arson. She avoided my gaze, looking nervously at her father, her tone almost pleading. Dad, let it go. Let sleeping dogs lie. Watching her guilty, furtive demeanor, the last flicker of warmth in my heart vanished completely. I turned to Mr. Davis, spreading my hands, my tone calm and even. Uncle, you see, that's your daughter's attitude. It seems our two families' destiny ends here. With that, I turned and walked out of the hospital room. Behind me, I heard Mr. Davis' furious roar again, Serafina Davis' cries from being slapped, and Mrs. Davis' futile attempts to intervene. I didn't stop. Just as I reached the door of the hospital room, I bumped into a man carrying a large bouquet of crimson roses, Julian Vance. He saw me, his eyes filled with unconcealed provocation. Well, if it isn't Ethan Hayes. What? Wedding cancelled? So you came to the hospital to beg Serafina Davis to take you back? He deliberately extended the garish bouquet forward. Too bad. Serafina Davis probably doesn't have time for you right now. After all, she and Chloe Henderson, they are all my... He stepped closer, lowering his voice, uttering a few words disdainfully in a volume only we two could hear. Obedient little dogs, so docile. Tell them to kneel, they kneel. Tell them to strip, they strip. Tell them to lick, they lick. Do you know? Your $1 million gown. Serafina Davis wore it and did so many debauched things in front of me, you can't even imagine. I couldn't be bothered to waste words on him. I just wanted to leave immediately and check on Mr. Hayes and Mrs. Hayes. I tried to step around him, but he deliberately extended his arm to block my path. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. Ethan Hayes, shall we talk about the art of nudity? You know, Serafina Davis and the others, they are willing to do anything for me, accept anything, while you, a rich second generation who's only rich, are only good for watching them climax at my feet. I frowned, unceremoniously pushing away his blocking hand. The force wasn't great, but Julian Vance dramatically cried out in pain. Ah! Ethan Hayes, what are you doing? Hitting me? From inside the hospital room, Serafina Davis' anxious voice immediately rang out. Julian Vance. Julian Vance, what's wrong? She seemed to want to rush out, but her father held her tightly, so I could only hear her struggling cries. Dad. Let me go. Julian Vance needs me. Just then, a flurry of high heels clattered down the hallway. Serafina Davis' 6 close friends had arrived together. Seeing Julian Vance clutching his wrist, looking pained, they immediately rushed over like dogs greeting their master. Julian. Are you okay? Are you hurt bad? Chloe Henderson was the first to rush to Julian Vance's side, her look of concern probably something even her boyfriend had never seen. Oh my God. Your hand is red. Does it hurt? Let me rub it for you. Another friend, Harper Collins, directly grabbed Julian Vance's hand and gently massaged it. Ethan Hayes. You bastard. How dare you lay a hand on Julian Vance? Who do you think you are? You're not fit to touch Julian Vance. You useless person. You only resort to violence. They chattered around Julian Vance, showering him with solicitous questions. At the same time, they cursed me, as if I had committed some heinous crime. Chloe Henderson even pointed directly at my nose, and started yelling obscenities. You useless man. You couldn't keep your fiancé, so you just take it out on others. Serafina Davis is blind. How can you compare to Julian Vance? You can't even hold a candle to Julian. I looked at their unsightly display and found it utterly ironic. It seems you care more about Julian Vance than your own boyfriends. These 6 women were clearly blinded by rage. Hearing my sarcasm, they spoke without thinking, of course. Julian Vance is so wonderful. Unlike some useless people who only snitch behind our backs. Julian Vance has talent, charm, and understands women's hearts. Who do you think you are? Exactly. We just like Julian Vance. We're willing to be good to him. He deserves the love of all women. Our boyfriends. What are they? Can they compare to Julian Vance? They are not fit to carry Julian Vance's shoes. That's right. They are not even as good as Julian Vance's dog. The next second, I slowly raised my voice, ensuring it would be clearly heard in a certain direction. Guys, did you hear that? In your girlfriends' hearts, you are not even as good as Julian Vance's dog. The moment I finished speaking, the 6 men, who had been patiently lurking in various corners nearby, emerged like vengeful spirits. They were the wealthy benefactors Chloe Henderson, and the others had worked so hard to ensnare, and also the useless men they claimed were not even as good as Julian Vance's dog. The arrogance on the bridesmaids' faces instantly froze, turning into terror. But before they could react, the 6 men charged straight at Julian Vance, who was still surrounded by the women. Julian Vance, you son of a bitch. You dare mess with my woman. An artist. I'll teach you about art. And naked kneeling and licking. Today I'll teach you what it means to kneel and call me daddy. Fists, slaps, and flying kicks rained mercilessly down on Julian Vance, uncoordinated, fueled only by primal rage and violence. Julian Vance was caught off guard and pummeled, letting out a pig-like shriek. He tried to protect his proudly handsome face, and also his groin. His 2 hands flailed wildly, blocking and covering himself, his posture pathetic and comical. The usually debonair artist was now being ground into the floor like a rag doll. The onlookers around were terrified by the sudden violence and recoiled, not daring to step forward, but there were always some who loved to watch a spectacle. Someone discreetly started live streaming on their phones. Holy crap. Live fight. Who's that guy, so punchable? Wait, isn't that the male lead from the art photo? The one called Julian Vance. And those girls next to him, aren't they the bridesmaids who were kneeling in the photo? Ha 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 ha. So funny. In the art photo, he acts like a god. In reality, he's beaten like a dog. Serves them right for acting like sluts. For that guy putting on S. They deserve it. Who's that handsome guy standing there not moving? Oh, it's the groom Ethan Hayes. The 6 bridesmaids, who had been stunned by the beating, finally reacted. Seeing their beloved Julian Vance screaming in agony, they disregarded what foolish things they had just said, and shrieked, rushing forward, "Stop! What are you doing? Don't hit Julian Vance. Let him go." They frantically tore at their respective boyfriends or ex-boyfriends, trying to rescue Julian Vance from the punches and kicks. In the chaos, the 6 women instinctively circled Julian Vance, forming a protective barrier. Their positioning eerily mirrored the way they had knelt before Julian Vance in that art photo, except, in the photo, their eyes were glazed and filled with desire. Now, each of them was disheveled and utterly disarrayed. Harper Collins was the most ferocious in the struggle. She desperately yanked on her boyfriend's arm, preventing him from continuing to hit Julian Vance. In her desperation, she even pulled off her boyfriend's carefully styled wig, revealing a bald scalp underneath. The man yelped in pain, instinctively flinging his head back, and Harper Collins' sharp fingernails directly raked across his cheek. The other bridesmaids fared no better, scratching, biting, cursing. The scene completely spiraled out of control. The men, especially Mr. Collins, Harper's boyfriend, whose wig had been pulled off and face scratched, feeling the burning pain on his face, and the astonished gazes of those around him, he was absolutely livid. He had put this woman on such a pedestal, treating her like a treasure, and this was how she repaid him. Harper Collins and the other bridesmaids, seeing their wealthy benefactors, whom they had worked so hard to reel in, now in a rage, and then looking at the half-dead Julian Vance on the ground, finally realized they had done something irreversible. Their movements froze, and they stood rooted to the spot. Harper Collins, her boyfriend, pointed at her. "You damn well wait. I'll make sure your pathetic company disappears by tomorrow. And this bastard Julian Vance, I'll make his life a living hell." The other men echoed him, their eyes cold as they looked at their respective girlfriends. "That's right. And all of you. Get the hell out. I'll cough up every single cent I invested in your families. Wait to go bankrupt, you bitch. The threats brought them back to reality slightly, but before they could fully process the cataclysmic disaster awaiting them, they heard that Julian Vance would be made to suffer a living hell. They didn't even stop to consider what the previous sentence meant for their families, and once again, they frantically rushed towards their boyfriends. You dare touch Julian Vance. If anything happens to him, I'll fight you to the death. You bastards. Stay away from Julian Vance. They cursed without thinking, completely tearing apart their last shred of reputation, and completely cutting off their own retreat. The scene once again descended into an extreme, chaotic brawl. Just then, several police officers rushed in, trying to separate the fighting crowd. Everybody stop. Police. Freeze. However, the bridesmaids, blinded by rage, completely ignored the warnings. They were disoriented, even mistook the officers trying to separate them as targets. Scratching and clawing, the police outside quickly found a megaphone. Listen up. Stop fighting immediately. Otherwise, we will use force. The high decibel warning finally brought the chaotic scene to a halt. Chloe Henderson probably thought help had arrived. She immediately pointed at me, and then at the 6 men who had just stopped fighting. Officers, arrest them quickly. They are disturbing the peace in a public place. Malicious assault. Look what they did to Julian Vance. However, the leading officer ignored her accusations. Handcuff these women and the man on the ground. Take them all in. Chloe Henderson's eyes widened in disbelief. Why are you handcuffing us? They are the ones who hit him. Chloe Henderson, you are suspected of malicious arson and attempted murder. You need to come with us for questioning. The rest of you. The officer swept his gaze over the other 5 bridesmaids and Julian Vance, obstructing justice, assaulting an officer. You all coming too? Serafina Davis was finally released from the hospital room by her father. Her hair was disheveled, and her face still bore tear stains and dust. She stared blankly as Julian Vance and the 6 bridesmaids were handcuffed and led away by the police. I looked at her current disheveled state, but my mind uncontrollably flashed back to the first time I met her. She was like a completely different person than compared to now. My parents were often abroad, and the bullies at school would frequently corner me in the alleyway, demanding exorbitant protection money. Countless fists rained down on me, and I could only grit my teeth and endure it. It was Serafina Davis, with her group of friends, who stood in front of me. She warned those guys that from then on, I was under her protection. Anyone who dared lay a hand on me again would face the consequences. From that day on, no one dared touch a hair on my head, and from that moment, that girl in a white dress, with bright, yet slightly wild eyes, found a permanent place in my heart. Later, I transferred to a school abroad, and could only keep this nascent affection deeply hidden. I thought I might never see her again in this lifetime, but fate played a ridiculous trick, and I met her again on the streets of a foreign land. At that time, she was heartbroken and utterly devastated because Julian Vance had chosen a wealthy heiress from an old money family. She didn't even remember who I was, yet, I foolishly believed it was a gift from heaven, an opportunity to get close to her again. I frantically wanted to shower her with all the best things in the world. She graciously accepted all my kindness and my courtship. We completed our studies together and returned home. I mobilized all my resources, pulling her family's company, which was already on the brink of collapse, back from bankruptcy. Even the businesses of her 6 bridesmaids, thanks to my support, experienced a revival and began to flourish. During that time, we truly had a period of happiness and fulfillment. I thought I had finally found my happy ending. It wasn't until Julian Vance returned home in disgrace after being abandoned by the heiress that he reappeared in her life. Everything changed. She spent less and less time with me, and her smiles grew increasingly forced. Her phone was constantly unreachable. When asked, she'd say she was busy, or that she was with her girlfriends. Her girlfriend's statements were astonishingly consistent, perfectly seamless. All the beautiful illusions I had about love and trust were utterly shattered on the wedding day, the moment she didn't show up. By that appalling photo, in the interrogation room at the police precinct, Julian Vance sat opposite me, with a police officer present. His usual artistic demeanor had vanished, replaced only by panic and the frantic desperation to evade blame. It wasn't me. It really wasn't me. Chloe Henderson was responsible for the arson. Serafina Davis knew about it too. They planned it together. They wanted to stage a ploy to earn your family's undying gratitude. He spoke incredibly fast, desperate to absolve himself of all responsibility, in another interrogation room. When the police relayed Julian Vance's testimony to Chloe Henderson, she first froze, then completely broke down. Julian Vance. You bastard. May you rot in hell. She lunged at the table, but was firmly restrained by the police. It was you. You clearly incited me. Chloe Henderson pulled out her phone and slammed it onto the table, an audio recording. I have an audio recording. After a burst of jarring static, Julian Vance's voice was clearly audible. Chloe Henderson, don't be afraid. It's just a small spark. It won't kill anyone. Think about it. As long as Serafina Davis becomes the savior of the Hayes family, won't Ethan Hayes change his mind? Then, for your family's business, won't Serafina Davis speak to Ethan Hayes on your behalf? Understand? This is called sacrificing the individual for the greater good. Julian Vance was the instigator, Chloe Henderson was the one who carried it out, and Serafina Davis was in the know, a silent accomplice. As for the other 5 girlfriends, although they did not directly participate in the arson, their pushing and scratching of the police officers in the hospital corridor was enough to have them temporarily detained for assaulting an officer and obstructing justice. I walked out of the police precinct and made a few calls. Cease all resource allocation to the Henderson Group. Terminate all cooperation with Harrison Inc. Initiate a financial audit of Collins Corp. To uncover every financial irregularity, the funds and resources I had injected into their 6 families because of Serafina Davis. Now, I would reclaim every cent, with interest. Chloe Henderson's family was already in utter chaos. Because of her involvement as the arson's mastermind, the other 5 families quickly descended into chaos as well. The patriarchs of those families, who had originally hoped to climb the ladder of the influential Hayes family through their daughters, were absolutely furious upon learning everything, especially after finding out their daughters had assaulted and insulted their benefactor, and even assaulted an officer, all for Julian Vance in the hospital. Not long after, the 5 girlfriends who had just been released were dumped at my doorstep by several intimidating men, dragged like dead dogs. Each of them had disheveled hair, with obvious wounds on their faces and bodies. With no time to compose themselves, they were kicked to the ground by the people behind them, forced to kneel towards the villa's main gate. Mr. Hayes. We were wrong. We were blind. We were utterly deluded. Please show mercy, spare our families. We were ignorant before, misled by that scoundrel Julian Vance. They cried out, repeatedly slamming their foreheads against the ground. Mr. Hayes, for the sake of the many years of friendship between me and Serafina Davis, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window on the 2nd floor. Friendship. When you idolized Julian Vance, and said I couldn't even hold a candle to Julian, why didn't you think about friendship then? When you surrounded Julian Vance in the hospital, calling me useless, calling me worse than a dog, why didn't you mention friendship? The ones you have a bond with are Serafina Davis and Julian Vance, not me. Instead of wasting your energy kneeling and kowtowing here, save your breath, and go beg your artist Julian Vance. See if he can show great mercy, and for the sake of your utter groveling, save your precarious families. After speaking, I pulled the curtains closed. The doorbell rang again. This time, it was Serafina Davis. Her arm was still bandaged, her face pale, her eyes red and swollen. She had clearly just been released. She looked at me, her eyes holding a complex expression, and opened her mouth, but in the end, she adopted her customary posture. Ethan Hayes, are you done making a scene? Do you have to take things this far? Chloe Henderson and the others already know they were wrong, so why are you still making things difficult for them? She still thought I was acting out of spite, playing games. Stop it, Ethan Hayes. Her tone carried an air of condescension. As long as you stop targeting them, I can let bygones be bygones regarding what happened before. From now on, I'll cut ties with Julian Vance. We can still be like before. She paused, believing her concession was already generous enough, then added a threatening remark. If you rein it in a bit, it will be better for all of us. Otherwise, there will truly be no future for us, and then our family, along with Chloe Henderson's family and the others, will no longer cooperate with you. Hearing that last sentence, I finally couldn't help but scoff. Cooperation? What basis do they have to talk cooperation with me? Serafina Davis, have you still not grasped the situation? Without the Hayes family, without my resources, what are your Davis family and your girlfriend's families, then? A tiny bit of profit that slipped through my fingers would be enough to sustain your families for several years. Now, What do you have to negotiate terms with me? With your cheap let bygones be bygones. Or with your pure artistic exchanges with Julian Vance? Serafina Davis' face turned ashen. She had probably never imagined that I, who had always indulged her every whim, would utter such heartless words. Ethan Hayes, you. She seemed to want to curse me, but couldn't find the right words. Finally, shaking with rage, she abruptly turned and walked away. You'll regret this. She threw the words out, staggering towards the main gate. However, she couldn't even make it out of the villa's main gate. Mr. Davis blocked the doorway, his face livid, and grabbed a handful of her hair. Slap. A brutal slap landed on her face. Serafina Davis staggered from the blow and fell to the ground. Bystanders nearby glanced over, pointing and murmuring towards them. Mr. Davis, however, paid no heed, punching and kicking his daughter, who lay on the ground. I told you to go beg Mr. Hayes for forgiveness. Where the hell do you think you're going? You've utterly shamed me. He'll beat you to death, you shameless creature. He beat and cursed her, striking her severely, completely disregarding Serafina Davis' cries and pleas for mercy. Finally, he dragged Serafina Davis, covered in injuries, back to my villa's doorstep like a dead dog, and then brutally shoved her to the ground. Kneel. Mr. Davis roared at Serafina Davis, pointing at the villa's main gate. Beg. Beg until Mr. Hayes forgives you. Otherwise, you can die outside. Never think of stepping foot into the Davis family home again. Serafina Davis lay on the ground, trembling all over, her face smeared with tears, blood, and dirt. Utterly humiliated, she looked up despairingly at the tightly closed villa gate, then began to repeatedly kowtow. Ethan Hayes, I was wrong. Please, forgive me. I truly know I was wrong. Her cries were hoarse, her forehead quickly broke open, and blood streamed down her cheeks. I watched all of this, without any softening of heart or a trace of emotion. She kowtowed for a long time, until her voice grew weaker and weaker, and her movements became slower and slower. Finally, due to excessive blood loss, and her arm wound becoming inflamed and infected, her head lolled to the side, and she fainted. People, the Davis family had stationed in the shadows to observe, hastily dragged the unconscious Serafina Davis away. Only a stark pool of blood remained at the villa's entrance. Half a month later, under the joint efforts of myself and the other 6 men to dismantle them, Harper Collins, who in the hospital, to protect Julian Vance, didn't hesitate to pull off her boyfriend's wig and scratch his face. Her family's business, already precarious, was the first to declare bankruptcy. I didn't even bother to inquire about the details, only vaguely heard that to repay debts, Harper Collins was packaged up by her family and sold to a desperate corner of the world. The once domineering rich girl, whose only remaining value was as a tool to repay debts. What I hadn't expected was that Chloe Henderson and Julian Vance still had a trick up their sleeve. They somehow had some leverage over Serafina Davis, making her empty her last bit of savings to get them both out of detention. The families of the remaining girlfriends, after losing my resource allocation, were then relentlessly pursued and blocked by their ex-boyfriends' families, and couldn't even last a month. Bankruptcy liquidations followed one after another. Serafina Davis' own family was already on its last legs, only a step away from complete collapse. The girlfriends who once surrounded her had now all become desperate vagrants. They were hounded relentlessly by debt collection calls and visitors daily. Driven to desperation, their families were also preparing to follow Harper Collins' family's example, planning to sell them off to settle debts. In desperation, these women decided to smuggle themselves out of the country to escape this place where they no longer belonged. But before their escape, they held a final dinner party. They invited Julian Vance, who they once put on a pedestal, and Serafina Davis, who was usually the closest friend. That meal became a true meal of no return. They added a large dose of muscle relaxant to the drinks. Serafina Davis and Julian Vance quickly lost their ability to move, slumping in their chairs. Only their eyes could still dart around in terror, but their mouths couldn't utter a sound. While Serafina Davis and Julian Vance were fully conscious, the women slowly extracted every sellable organ from their bodies. The fresh organs were quickly packaged and sold. The money obtained was their capital for escape. The remaining mutilated bodies were repeatedly stewed in a pressure cooker until they became barely recognizable pulp and bone fragments. They split the money equally and began their escape. Had it not been for the neighbors, who, a few days later, could no longer tolerate the strong foul odor emanating from the house and called the police, perhaps no one would have found them. the police finally identified the pulp through DNA testing of trace tissues remaining at the scene: Serafina Davis, Julian Vance. The women who committed the crime were apprehended by border police during their attempt to smuggle themselves out of the country, caught red-handed. Awaiting them was the harshest judgment of the law, the death penalty. Serafina Davis was the Davis family's only heir. When Mr. and Mrs. Davis learned of their daughter's tragic and horrific fate, they could not withstand these successive blows, and completely lost their minds. Years later, I reappeared frequently in the public eye. By this time, I had already ascended to the top ranks of the world's wealthiest. In several cutting-edge industries, I led my company to an unmatched forefront. Under the spotlight, an equally dazzling woman stood beside me. Her family background, abilities, and looks could all rival mine. Most importantly, in this woman's eyes, they were filled completely with me.